Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Banchero Show, only on YouTube. I'm your host, and still a major league piece of work, Dan Banchero, coming to you live from the spectacular South Lake Tahoe. It's about 8:30 in the morning, Saturday, and I just got up and had a cup of coffee with a few ex-drunks and drug addicts over at the clubhouse they have down here off of the 50 highway, and I came over here to the beach, got myself a little picnic table. No wind, the water's nice and still. Life couldn't be any better, gotta tell you. Hope you're all having a great weekend. So last time we met, we spoke a little bit about creating peace through prayer to keep addiction in remission, and I talked a lot about the Second Beatitude, blessed are the peacemakers, and I spoke a little bit about prayer and keeping the mind focused on good thoughts creating good actions and good decision making for the most part. So this time I'd like to share a little bit about the Second Beatitude from the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus said, "Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted." So, on page 23 of Sermon on the Mount, Emmett Fox says this: "Nevertheless, trouble and suffering are often extremely useful, because many people will not bother to learn the truth until driven to do so by sorrow and failure. Sorrow then, relatively, becomes a good thing." That's on page 23. Now, if you've been following this show for the last 10 months, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about as far as sorrow becoming the catapult to get out of bad habits and bad thinking processes. And essentially, my mess has been my message with this little production I've been doing to share with all of you who care to join in for whatever reason. And I know that sometimes this show gets a little bit bland. You know, you get me reading all these things out of these books. It might sometimes seem a little bit monotone. Then I pepper in my off-the-wall stories as a result of drug addiction and alcoholism over the years, and possibly inspire some of you. And I know I sure have my showmanship, and my demeanor on the camera might be a little bit different from everyday life. But you know what? If the show wasn't interesting and entertaining, you probably wouldn't tune in. So take it as you leave it. But most people who see me on a daily basis know that what you see is what you get. So some of you don't get to see me on a daily basis, kind of get to know me a little bit better than you thought you did. Anyway, so many of my addictions, my relationships, my thoughts, my beliefs, my jobs, my careers, my choices, and many of my behaviors had driven me to sorrow and failure, right? So most of the time I wasn't aware that they were harmful. I was either naive, or I had good intentions, or really thought that these were good for me, you know. I may have taken longer to suffer through some of these feelings, but through consequences or through mistakes, to become aware, and then finally take some responsibility as opposed to find either reasons or fault for my circumstances. This is what I had to do. I believe the good thing that Emmett Fox was talking about out of all this in the beginning may have been me deciding to change something, or at least be willing to be open to something else. So in this case, God's will, or goodwill, or a better conception, right? Which I've talked about over and over and over again. And I know many of you seem to think that this show is very repetitive, but you know what? I'm trying to save my life here, and the consequences of my addictions, those are really repetitive, and I'm sick of those too. So, take it or leave it. So, I like to call this enlightenment through suffering, and I've used that phrase numerous times. I was turned on to that phrase by Dr. Wayne Dyer, that concept, and unfortunately, most of us as human beings don't want to take people's words for it, and we have to find out things for ourselves. Sometimes people die Sometimes people go to jail. Sometimes people go to prison, or some other types of bad consequences occur. And, you can take my word for it and try to change something. Maybe take some of these readings or buy some of these books and read it, and you'll feel better. Or not. So sooner or later, every human being will have to discover the truth about God and make his own contact with him firsthand. He'll have to acquire the understanding of truth, which will set him free once and for all from our three-dimensional limitations and their contaminants, which would be sickness, sin, or death. But most people will not undertake the search for God wholeheartedly unless driven thereto by trouble of some kind. And that's also on page 23. We got to be in some type of trouble to take action. Sometimes we get too comfortable as human beings. We're like, we don't really need, I don't need to change anything. Everything's fine. I don't need to stay hungry. I don't need to stay disciplined. It's all good. And then I don't know about you, but for me, if I'm not consistently asking through prayer for strength to get through everyday life, I usually make some type of mistake and screw things up real fast. So a contaminant is defined as a phenomenon that naturally accompanies or follows something. So in my case, sin, sickness, consequences of all kinds, and near death naturally accompany my alcoholism and my drug addiction too. Many of you guys remember the early 2000s. So after doing a thorough appraisal of myself and then disclosing it to another human being who might have had the same issues, I acquired the understanding of how I'm responsible for my truth, right? So then I was deciding, and I still decide to at this time, that I am 100% willing to be set free of my previous ideas that kept me in prison for years through, some might say getting humble and asking through prayer to the universe or to God or whatever, Jesus, the saints. I got all these medals and crosses and stuff that I wear, and some people might mistake it for the good old days where I used to wear the medallions and the gold and the bling. I used to have all those rings on each finger, but I don't wear that for bling anymore. I got this St. Benedict medal. I got the St. Jude medal. I got my crucifix here. I got my cross. And I'm praying to everybody, man, because even though some of these people are deceased, Jesus, Benedict, St. Ambrose, St. Francis, their spirit and their ideas still live on. So I'm trying to tap into that consciousness so I can stay aligned, right? And I know the sincerity of my voice is very questionable, but I'm just telling you, I'm kind of smirking because I know how bad it's been over the years. Oh man, what a wreck. Do you know that it's taken me 9 years to get back out here to Lake Tahoe? I mean, I used to come here 2 or 3 times a year, with the gang, and we'd have a good time, whether it was in the summertime or mostly New Year's Eve. But I've been here since the Great Wardell wedding, when Chuy Gomez was instructed to keep the microphone away from me. And the great Nick Burrows took my keys and drove the Mustang home as as we left the wedding that weekend, and I proceeded to get a major heat on the way home. And that was the last time I was here. 9 years it took. Unbelievable. But I'm here, and I intend on coming back. So I got a little sidetracked there. I'm looking at this beautiful lake and the stillness and the peace, and I'm in awe. It's great to be here. So on page 24, Fox says this: "Yet if people would turn to God and acquire something of this understanding while their health is still good, they need never be sick at all." So when I say you can take my word for it now, if you're on the fence, whether you're a drug addict or alcoholic, or let's say you got some other issue, right? Let's say you're an overeater, okay? Let's say you're sexually degenerate, okay? Now, there's all kinds of consequences that could come, health-wise or whatever. We'll just take those addictions right there. So you can hear the mess, which is the message from somebody like me, and you can take the steps to, prevent these things from happening in your life getting to that point. Now, many of you see me post these things on social media. I'm sure last night some of you might have seen me with the 5 plates of food at the buffet at Harrow's last night. Very unnecessary. Followed by the 9 different desserts. I didn't finish the pumpkin pie. And you might say, oh, how the heck do you keep your weight down? Well, I am able to spoil myself by drinking lots of protein shakes, taking lots of supplements, like turmeric mixed in with like a ginger kombucha, and load up on niacin and zinc, vitamin C, calcium. So I live with all these people, right? And they see me loading up on all these supplements. And all I know is that since I started doing that 18 months ago, I haven't snorted Coke or drank booze. That's all I know, okay? Because I'm in the direction of wellness. I pray every single day, numerous times a day. And I got into a prayer, as I said last episode. And all I know is I haven't done drugs or drank alcohol in 18 months, okay? I coach others and tell them what I did, and I take these proposals that we have in this little workbook here and the handbook, and I tell them my experience. And I put that as my priority over everything else. Carrying this message of wellness, right? And sometimes my other responsibilities, I gotta get caught up on. But all I know is I haven't used drugs or drank alcohol in 18 months. So if you're not willing to take my word for it, because that was a mess. If you don't believe me, you gotta go back and listen to some of those other episodes. So if you're not willing to take my word for it, you might be in big trouble. Or not. So here's a trip. If you don't believe in God, check this one out. So last week, I was talking about the 6th Beatitude, okay? Blessed are the peacemakers, right? Yada, yada, yada. So I'm with one of my associates, and we're on Whipple Avenue in Redwood City. And we're at a stoplight at Industrial Boulevard. And I look to my left, and there's a car with a bumper sticker on the back. And the bumper sticker reads, "Blessed are the peacemakers." Now, what are the chances of that bumper sticker being on that car right in front of me days after I do that episode based on that? There's no way. That's not an accident, That's a universal attraction. I mean, I'm telling you, the law of attraction is real, man. This is real life. Of all the things in the world on that bumper sticker to be, it's the 6th Beatitude, which I did a presentation on live for all of you. I mean, come on. You can't make this up. If you don't believe in some type of higher power, man, seek it out. Because it can change your mind. It can change all of your circumstances. When I change my mind, I change my character. When I talk about change my mind, it's not like, hey, Dan, what do you want for breakfast? Give me some blueberry pancakes. And then 5 minutes later, I said, no, I changed my mind. Give me a sausage omelet with extra chilies. That's not what I'm talking about changing my mind. I'm talking about changing my psychic abilities. I'm talking about where am I at in everyday circumstances? Where are my justified resentments? Where are my justified habits? I got to take a look at all this stuff. So in my case, if I'm appraising my behavior on a daily basis and using some type of daily inventory, as well as like what we call the spot check inventory, on a moment by moment basis, if I pause, if I'm not all over the place, then I'm ready to get pardoned of drug addiction and alcoholism on a daily basis through prayer and meditation by seeking a better understanding or better connection of God or goodwill. Okay. Now that I'm a little bit more well than I used to be, I can avoid losing my current mental health and never be sick at all, just by taking the preventive measures. See, It's just like me taking the vitamin C, the zinc, the niacin. So I prayed for help, and then I started listening to some radio broadcasts. I started reading some things, and I started getting some ideas about supplements and nutrition to help me feel better. And all I know is I haven't drank or used drugs in 18 months. Take it or leave it. That's one aspect, okay? But it starts with the prayer, the humility, and the discipline, okay? So that's how that passage relates to my recovery. I don't know about you. I would take a real good look at that. Okay, on page 24, he also says this. He says, divine power really is the source of man's supply. This portion of the paragraph reminds me of an old saying that I'm going to paraphrase. When the mind is correct, all of the details work themselves out. If my will is aligned with God's will or goodwill, I usually attract goodness into my life. It was important for me to finally understand to be patient because it may not occur as fast as I want it to. But by turning my thoughts and actions over to goodwill, I have decided to align my thoughts and actions, and I can trust that the supply will be provided for by this divine power that Fox is talking about. All right, he continues on and says this. He says, if prosperous people will now, while they are still prosperous, acknowledge God as their true source and pray regularly for still more spiritual understanding on this point, they need never suffer poverty or financial trouble at all. So this is what I'm going back to. We get comfortable, we think everything's okay, and then we stop seeking, and then something happens, and then there's some type of catastrophe or disturbance, or we get set back. Just by not staying disciplined and humble. This passage echoes to the third passage that I covered on page 1, but in a material security sense. I was able to take responsibility for my life through the inventory and then disclosing it and getting transparent with another human being. Now I can pray for knowledge of goodwill or God's will and how to carry that out, through my actions, through my thought process, through my decisions, through sharing it with others. And now I know what thoughts and what wants I had that were errored or unnecessary and eventually made my life unpleasant or harder to go through. I don't have to make decisions based on self anymore if I earnestly pray and meditate for better understanding of goodwill. Okay? So the command of money involves a responsibility which you cannot evade. You must dispense it wisely or take the consequences. That's on page 25. So we also got to be careful with our money. So like last night I went out to the casino and I said I wasn't going to, but I ate that big meal. It was kind of early still. I had nothing to do. So I went ahead and I saw the slot machines. And within 60 seconds I lost $50 doing $10 pulls on the red, white, and blue. So anyway, my alcoholism and drug addiction and old thinking influenced me to make bad or unnecessary purchases. Okay? This is what he's talking about. The command of money involves responsibility which you cannot evade. You must dispense it wisely or take the consequences. Okay? So going further, I had huge drug and bar bills. I would loan money through codependency. I had legal consequences. It cost me fines, lawyer and legal fees. I had classes I had to take. Hundreds of thousands of dollars went out the window in about 4 years. I don't have to make decisions based on self anymore if I earnestly pray and meditate for better understanding. So, not to mention anything else that I earned in that period between 2008 and 2018, just trying to get and remain sober. Anything I earned went out the window too. It was just one thing after another. Again, this is enlightenment through suffering. You don't have to do this. If you listen to these stories I went through, you take some of these suggestions, you might not have to go through this. If people just say, oh yeah, Dan, he's just an idiot, he's not a man of money, he's this, he's that. No, it was simple. I wasn't humble, I was frustrated, and I wasn't willing to take responsibility. And I was letting the people who are also very, very sick, I couldn't accept them, I couldn't accept that they couldn't accept me. And I drove myself bonkers. All right, so getting back to the mourning. So on page 25, Fox says this is, and for us, this mourning will be a blessing in disguise, for through it we shall be comforted. So I mourned through all these catastrophic consequences, this humiliation, this embarrassment, and now I'm comforted because I survived. My mind's been corrected, which is debatable, and I can share it with you. So I had no idea today that I would be so grateful for my alcoholism and drug addiction over those years. It was so bad that it directed me to such a great way of life through doing things like this. And this seems very unnecessary to many people, but for me, I'm saving my life. So if I didn't suffer the way I did, I may just be some average Joe walking blindly through life in a state of ignorance and seeking the worldly clamors that are advertised to us daily. I'm now aware that love and kindness will generate everything that I need. I never worked hard. I worked smart. But anything I ever earned was out of just genuine kindness and being friendly, saying hello to people, looking them in the eye, ask how they're doing. Sincerely, just basic stuff, So everything was generated, right? And I got a new car that's provided me with good gas mileage for my job, and I'm able to help transport people who are going through a tough time and to help them out, and drive up to Tahoe with very little cost. My credit's been fixed. I got some pretty good clothes, and I make for what I actually do on a daily basis, I get paid pretty damn good. But it all started with my character. You know what I mean? It didn't start with hard work. It was all character. If you saw what I do on a daily basis, you might be disgusted. Anyway, so I achieve these things through higher awareness, service, and virtue, genuine virtue, as best as I can. So I'm grateful for the mourning of all the stuff that I went through. All that suffering and sadness, it was all worth it now. But thank God I was pulled out of the pit before I died, because I should have died numerous times. Friendships I lost, bad opportunities just blown out the window. So my goal here is to just attract another suffering person to this type of way of living. People know that they can message me. I won't disclose their name or anything to anybody else. And numerous people from high school and ex-coworkers have called me. They've called, they've messaged, they've reached out. One guy, he just, he said he's a, what's that called? Reborn Christian, and he wants to have a sit down, have a cup of coffee, talk about prayer. This was the goal of the damn Banchero show all along, And I know, based on my behavior over the years and what people think they know about me, it could have been seen as some type of publicity stunt and a cry for attention, but it's not. Jimmy crack corn, and I don't care what you think. I know what my goal is. I know what my intentions are. And like I said, this is helping me be held accountable. And because there's times where I still flip out on the freeway and make an ass of myself and shout out some very, very vulgar things. Very vulgar. But I can tell you guys and be transparent that we're all human. All I know is I'm going to go out and I'm going to enjoy this lovely day here. I'm going to probably space out and a few books that I got that I haven't read yet. I'm going to spend the rest of my morning doing that. And then I'm going to head over to some of these trails up here in the hills that I've looked up on Google. I might go out to DL Bliss. It's a beach I've been to since I went to Camp Concord in '93 and '94. So that'd be kind of cool. Beautiful little beach. See right through the water, kind of like in Hawaii. So anyway, I want you all to have a great day. It's kind of like what Hulk Hogan used to say. You want to feel good, take your vitamins, pray, train. If you do those things, you can go out and go hog wild a couple times a week and go have a big dessert. Like me, have king crab legs and prime rib and salmon and jambalaya and roasted veggies. This is a nice big plate of food yesterday. A few plates of food. Put me right off for the count. So God bless you. God bless America. And hope you all have a great day. Don't forget to pray. Prepare through prayer. And whatever you do, don't drink and don't do drugs. Just for today. Until next time, here's the Feeling Good All the Time. I'm Dan Banchero. Thanks for joining me on YouTube. We'll catch you next time.